Hi everyone, welcome to the basement. My name is Scott, man behind Trainman 5135. Now today we're going to talk about something I really haven't seen discussed a lot in Lionel or O-Scale, and that's a different way to trigger your signals. Now Lionel, when they came out with signals back in the day, they came out with different types of controllers, mainly the 153C. The 153C is powered by pressure of the train, which works pretty reliably unless you have a train with different weights on it. It can be pretty tricky to get different weights of different cars to make the signal work the way it should, and plus with the spring mechanism can come undone with vibrations. In this video, I'm going to show you how I control most of my signals using a relay and an insulated piece of track. Okay, so here you can see one of the signals I've implemented it on. This signal was built by my grandfather from scratch in the late 1990s. It's based on the traditional Lionel 2-track gantry bridge design and really is very representative of any signal you'll find out there. Mine just happens to be custom. Now, as you can see, I have 3 different wires attached to the tracks here. This signal is technically 2, so that's why you see 6 wires here, but each signal requires 3 wires attached to the track and then 3 wires that go into the mechanism below, which I'll show in a minute. So what I have here is center rail power, dead rail, which is insulated, and the regular outside rail. That's all you really need on the upper part. And then all these wires go down into the device below, which is where the wiring diagram comes into play. And then they come back out here and into the signal bridge itself. So from the track, the 3 connections I showed above, this is where all 3 of those wires go. They go into these 2 boxes. Now this is my addition to what they wrote in the OGR forums, is these boxes. These just keep the electronics safe from wandering hands, or in my case, wandering dogs. Now basically what happens in these boxes is everything that happens on the wiring diagram. So what we have here is AC power coming in, going through a converter to DC power, and then into the relay. From the relay, they go back up top to the signal and connect to ground and each signal light. So from my case here, green and red. So as you can see here on the screen, here's a more detailed diagram of what I was just describing. So in my case, I'm using track power for the AC power that goes off to the sides. That's where my center rail comes in. I felt it made the most sense to use just the rail that we're using here to control this, and I haven't had any problems doing it that way. So again, we have insulated rail and power rail coming in to the box to be converted to DC power, and then from there it goes into the relay. So I keep mentioning insulated rail, and what is that? Well, on Lionel tubular track, as comes standard, the center rail is insulated from the outside rails, just so you don't get a short circuit. The outside rails are connected together by the ties, so they are electrically the same. They are ground, but they're electrically the same. So what we have to do to make this circuit work is essentially do to the center, or do to the outside what we've done to the center. So here you can see this, the camera will focus, this fish paper, that insulates the middle rail from the outside rails as it goes over the tie. When we do the circuit that I've talked about for the signals, you have to pick an outside rail, doesn't matter which one, put the same fish paper on it. There we go. Put the same fish paper on the binding post here, and then on the ends, you have to put an insulated pin, either wood or plastic ones they sell. Doesn't really matter as long as it's an insulator and it fits the track. That will allow the circuit to work correctly. It's pretty straightforward to pull these apart. There are plenty of videos out there and articles out there on how to do that. But for those of you who aren't aware, that's essentially what we have. That's what I've done here with all of the track. It works for curves, it works for straights, O27. The only thing I don't know is how you would do it for Gargraves or Fast Track or any other track system, simply because I haven't done it. So let me know in the comments if that's even possible in the other track systems or not. So as you can see here, if you don't want to solder wires to the tracks, you don't have to. I use track clips on this one just because of where it is on the layout and all the bench work. I couldn't exactly, or rather I was going to have a really tough time getting the wires through here. So I just used track clips for this one. I took advantage of the fact that the track clips only look at 2 of the rails and not all 3. So I used 2 track clips to do the same thing I did on the other side. So in this case, this rail has been insulated. It's tough to see here, but I've put fish paper around each of the connections here, and put insulated track pins on either side. And so I did the same on every one of them. So now this rail is ground but also insulated. So when the metal wheels come across, it completes the circuit and triggers the relay to change the light. So for example, this track clip is looking at the traditional ground, which is connected to everything on the layout, and center rail. This other one is looking at the insulated rail I made and also just an extra center rail connection. Works just the same as the other ones. It's just track clips, and yeah, still works just the same. And for any of you wondering why is a rock here, this signal is also another custom job by my grandfather. He did a beautiful job, very top heavy. So for now, rocks keep it from hitting my trains. All right, now here's a demonstration of how it works. I'm just going to power up the outside track here, so you'll only see one of the lights in the signal bridge come on. That's just because they're tied to track power. When both tracks are on, both lights come on. So without further ado, here we go. Works pretty well, huh? Another thing I'll note is that post-war engines don't like to start on that circuit. So if you have any issues with that, just move the engine off the circuit and it works just fine. I don't know why, but that's what I've seen in my experience. Now, an important thing to note about this particular relay that I've used and linked in the description is that you can toggle high or low frequency for a trigger. So if you buy the ones I did, make sure to move the little plug that I've pointed out here on the screen to 0 or low. Otherwise, it won't work. You'll have it all wired up right, like I have a few times, and it won't work. So you just move it over to that, and it works right away. Now, while I have hyped the system up a lot in my description of it, it's not completely foolproof. There are some things that will make it a little bit finicky, but as I've found, it's way less finicky and much easier to solve than what I've at least experienced with the 153C and other systems out there. Now, for starters, if you have a long piece of track, like for example on my layout here right behind me, I have a section of track that Lionel made in the late 2000s that's 4 feet long. That can be a pain to insulate properly, and frankly is such a long trigger for a signal, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. So for that piece of track, I'm still stuck with using the 153C. Additionally, if your wheels are dirty, it won't complete the circuit, and the signal will actually flip back to green and then flip back to red and flip a whole bunch of times back and forth. So you got to keep your wheels clean, which is something you didn't necessarily have to do before, but in the very least, at least in my opinion, it's easier to clean wheels than try to dial in a spring for different weights of cars and then have the rumbling of the trains undo that. Additionally, you don't always need the system. You can use insulated rail on a whole bunch of different signals without buying anything. For example, for a signal or a crossing gate that just has an on-off function. So for example, for a crossing gate, when the train activates it, it just goes down like the one behind me. You don't need that. It is simply outside insulated rail and track power. That's it. There is no other wiring on this. All I had to do was put a track clip here, or I could have soldered it, connect one side to the insulated piece that I've insulated myself, and to the center rail. Train goes by, crossing gate comes on, it just works like that. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope it helped. It certainly helped me a lot. Shout out again to the person who wrote this up on OGR. It's been a game changer for me, and it's been super, super reliable in the time I've used it. So again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next. Get down in the comments. Thanks.